Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast brought to you by RaceForThePrize.com, coming to you live Sunday morning from a hotel lobby in Chillicothe, Ohio. No idea how this is going to go, so we'll be quick. Let's look at the gateway picks. Where we'll start is with the value. These are the drivers I like the most: McDowell, Hocevar, Stenhouse Jr., Zane Smith. As long as McDowell can hang into the top 10, it's going to work. A lot of people are going to be scared to play him. The Team Penske Alliance seems to have showed up pretty well for McDowell. Again, if he can lead the first segment, which I think he'll do, his pit crew's been okay of late. If he can hang in the top 10 all day, he's going to get there. And a lot of people are going to be scared to play him. Cindric's in the same situation. I'm probably a little bit more worried about him. Hocevar, maybe you're leaning on Truck Series experience here, and that can work. I like what Stenhouse did in practice. I know his track history hasn't been that great at Gateway. The car has been trending in the right direction. Again, with Zane Smith, you've got that Truck Series experience. Like what he did in practice. I think he can move forward. Those are the plays that I'm probably leaning on the most. I also say don't sleep on Derek Kraus. Pretty strong results recently. If you go back to the 2022 Truck Series race, he raced from the back to 7th place. So he has plenty of experience at this track as well, and it shouldn't be overlooked. The truck drivers and younger drivers may have a little, I wouldn't say an advantage, but the gap's not as big this week for some of those guys who can impress. Again, that's where I would go value-wise. You could consider Cindric, right? If you're going to consider McDowell, then maybe consider Cindric as well if he can hang in the top 10. Again, Penske has looked good every year at Gateway. And we can pretty much consider Michael McDowell, Front Row Motorsports, their alliance, a part of that alliance. Also looks good is JGR. So if I'm looking at my hogs, Logano's my favorite. Hamlin would be my second favorite. Blaney, I think they're all right there. The thing that worries me with Gibbs, and I think if you have access to the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet, it would behoove you to look at this, is our pit road data. And the thing that really concerns me with Ty Gibbs is obviously his pit crew has been lights out and on fire. And they're going to get him in and out of his box quickly. But he just doesn't do himself any favors in terms of his on-off times. And we really needed to hit on everything. Now, of course, he was number one here at Charlotte, but he had the number one pit stall. So that definitely helped that number. But everything's going to come down to pit road, and I believe that might give you a little bit of a downgrade on Gibbs, whereas Hamlin's been pretty elite. I know we talked about earlier in the podcast this week with Hamlin having issues on his pit stall because of Chris Buescher right there with on-off, but basically checking every box in terms of pit speed. And he has the car as well. Same thing with Logano. He's got the car this week. His pit crew's been pretty good. He's good at getting on and off. Obviously Hendrick is pretty good on pit road, but they don't quite have the cars this week. We could see them move forward and sneak away with top 10s, but I just don't think they're going to lead laps and run fast laps. Bell's there as well. And Bell could be the guy that absolutely kills me. Again, if you've got access to the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet, $30 for June, $55 for June and July. PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, you can get access to that. So those are the guys that I would build around with my hogs. And I like taking these value guys that kind of just hang around there and score enough fantasy points. I know early in the week I wanted Chase Place differential. I know early in the week I wanted Kyle Busch. But when I look at some of his raw laps for Kyle Busch and I look at how many times he came down pit road, it's not very encouraging for me that they were tinkering as much. You got guys like Tyler Reddick who went out and just ran a big solid run. We look at Kyle Busch coming in, tinkering. I don't know if he's got the car. And that concerns me. You look at Tyler Reddick, and he may be someone I'm sleeping on a little too much, but goes out there and just lays down some really good laps, seems to be very comfortable and happy with his car. Obviously, pretty close alliance there with 2311. Track history, not really on his side, but again, last year they had the brake rotor issues. So, Reddick could be a sleeper that kills me. Bell could be a sleeper that kills me. I think the obvious chalk, though, are going to be Blaney, Hamlin, and Joey Logano, who just barely missed out qualifying in the front. If he makes it to the second round of qualifying, then maybe he's up here and he becomes a huge dynamite play. So I don't mind him just barely missing. We saw in 2022 Kyle Busch starting in a similar spot going on to win. And, how does he get to the front, make a couple passes, pit cycling on pit road, get some spots? I could very easily see him going with the two-tire strategy and getting to the front that way as well. So I'm not concerned about his starting position whatsoever. The car looks good. Penske's been good. He's been good at this track. They're moving in the right direction. He checks the pit box. As far as anything else goes, that's pretty much it. I know it's a quick podcast, but again, like I said, I'm in a hotel lobby in Chillicothe, Ohio. And Could have done it in the workout room, but I think it would have been a little too loud. I think the treadmill was a little too loud, and definitely don't want to record in my room and wake the family up. So definitely don't want to start Sunday out like that either. So again, I think McDowell, and that's going to scare you. Host of our truck experience, I think he can get there, and his host of our looked fine in practice. Stenhouse looked fine in practice. They definitely look better than a lot of the guys in that back class, in that Lemons class. St. Smith as well put down some decent speeds that slot him a little bit ahead of those other drivers in that class, and could knock on the door with competing with some of the top tier equipment. Cindric, same story as McDowell. I don't really care too much for Suarez, although he's showing up halfway decent. These other guys, maybe I flirt with Krause, maybe I flirt with Gilliland. I'm really kind of disappointed, given the Truck Series experience. You would think him being a little bit higher, but it just didn't show up this week, and he should have the same Penske setup. Now, maybe they go in and change things around and mirror what McDowell has, and they make some setup adjustments. But 6,400 is kind of a little expensive too. If I'm chasing the back, maybe I'm just going to go with Krause, because no one's going to want to play him and believe in him and really think too much about that truck experience. But he's there. Yeah, other than that, I'm not really chasing in these other guys. Really wasn't impressed. Really think SHR is probably going to be a lame duck team for the rest of the season, so I can't see much coming from them. And that bumps up the rest of those other teams in the back pack a little bit. So again, Logano, Hamlin, Blaney, love them. Gibbs could burn me. Bell could burn me. And I think Tyler Reddick could burn me as well. Anyone else? I mean, if I do go to the place differential route, I don't mind Ross Chastain. The pit crew speeds are up there in my rankings, and so he does check that box. He does have plenty of experience at Gateway in the past, so he has that benefit as well. His speeds were okay, and again, I don't want to overreact too much to practice speeds, because I think it's going to be hard to pass. It always is a Gateway. It's going to come down to pit road. It's going to come down to strategy and just hanging on to position. And I'm also not really that deeply concerned with fall off. So, I'd rather look at 5-lap average, single lap speed, pit crews, maybe a little bit of track history. I think that's going to do it. Again, racewayfortheprize.com, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. If you want to access the fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet, get all this data, look at the pit road data, make your picks and plays. I know it's kind of chalky where I'm going, but I don't think it's chalky at all to recommend McDowell. I don't know what the general consensus is. I think most people are going to be afraid to play him. But when I just crunch the numbers and keep going through different outcomes, as long as he hangs that top 10 at 6,500 and leads the first cycle before Blaney takes over, it's going to work. And then from there, you can pick and choose if you want to put Cindric in there as well. 6,200. Again, if he can just hang in the top 10, he's going to lose some place differential points. Maybe he scrapes off a couple fast laps. And if just no one else in this value range scores points, which could be very likely, then he could work. It's a Penske car for 6,200 at a track where they run really well. And his pit crew hasn't been bad either. If I look at Cindric, fast pit crew, again, younger drivers not really doing themselves a favor with on-off times, but a lot of times that's because of a poor starting position. So him starting in second place with a really good pit stall, he could easily have a top 10 day in terms of on-off and a good pit crew. And so that just helps him out through the entire race. So I wouldn't completely rule out Cindric either. That'll do it for me. Thanks for joining me, guys. Like, subscribe, share. Have a wonderful Sunday.